Welcome back to The Thing About Witch Hunts. I'm Josh Hutchinson, and today we're returning to a story we first shared back in episode 47 in August 2023. We're talking about the play Prick again, and here we're now in episode 166.
And I'm Sarah Jack. Prick is a powerful theatrical production about the Scottish witch trials written by playwright Laurie Flanigan-Hegge and originally directed by Maggie Griebel.
The play tells the stories of women from the Scottish witch trials, including an unknown woman whose name has been lost to history, Marioun Twedy, who was pricked but never confessed, and the infamous Isobel Gowdie.
Using haunting puppetry by artist Madeline Helling, dark comedy, and contemporary relevance, Prick draws a powerful line from the pricking and quarrelsome dames of the past to modern misogyny.
Since its premiere at the 2023 Edinburgh Fringe Festival, Prick has traveled to London, New Orleans, New Zealand, and is now heading to Chicago for 2 weekends, November 6th through 16th at the Den Theater.
Today we're joined by returning Minnesota guest playwright Laurie Flanigan-Hegge and puppet artist Madeline Helling. Laurie is wearing the Witches of Scotland memorial tartan like these.
We also have director Jeff Mills from Chicago's Proboscis Theater Company and director Amy Chaffee, who's an associate professor at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana, who directed the play there in New Orleans and also in New Zealand. So let's find out what's happened with Prick since we last spoke.
Welcome to the Thing About Witch Hunts podcast, returning guests Laurie Flanigan-Hegge and Madeline Helling, and welcome to our new guests, Amy Chaffee and Jeff Mills. Please let us know who you are and what we need to know about you.
I'll start. My name is Laurie Flanigan-Hegge, and I'm the playwright of Prick, which was inspired by the Witches of Scotland campaign for justice against the accused witches in the early modern period, and it premiered at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2023. When you so kindly had us on the first time, we talked about this play, and since then, it has been in the U.S., and it's in rehearsal right now with my colleague and friend, Jeff Mills, who is directing it in Chicago.
I'll take that. I am Jeff Mills, co-artistic director of Proboscis Theater Company in Chicago. We are a rough and tumble, scrappy little theater company ensemble. And Laurie and I and Amy, we've all been friends for a very long time, 35 years, something like that. And it's just when I heard that when Laurie had written this play about the witch trials in Scotland, it is historical territory that our company sort of has covered. And to approach that from a slightly different perspective was very exciting. The fact that it was Laurie was very exciting. And the fact that we have an opportunity to set the record straight a little bit to a small number of folks is also very exciting.
Since I got thrown a little energy there, I'll step in. I'm Amy Chaffee. I'm a professor at Tulane University in voice and acting. And while I predominantly coach voice and do accents and dialects in film and television, Laurie sent me this script saying, hey, if you know anybody. And then this opportunity opened up where I could direct a project for the first time in almost 9 years at this university. I got a slot at directing, which is actually originally how Jeff and Laurie and I met. I was directing way back when. But the play suited everything that I needed. And then I found out Jeff was already doing it. And I was like, oh. But then because I'm at a university and I had funding and everything kind of built in, I slid in and I got to do the North American premiere, which was at a university. Jeff was going to do the professional premiere. And then I was able to take the show with the entire student cast, 9 undergraduates, to a theater festival in New Zealand. So I also got to do the Oceania premiere. And we all used Madeline's puppet.
I'm Madeline Helling. I'm a puppet artist in Minneapolis, and I'm a friend and neighbor of Laurie. She approached me to work on this piece that she was writing, and it was very easy to say yes to it, very inspiring to tell a truthful story that's been suppressed
Thank you, everyone, for those introductions. It's very nice to see you again or to meet you for the first time. So thank you all for bringing your amazing talent and experience to the show. Laurie, it's been 2 years since we spoke about Prick. Can you refresh our memories of what is Prick?
Yes, so Prick is a very anachronistic play about the Scottish witch trials. And by anachronistic, I mean that it's set in the then and the now and everywhere in between. And that's been one of the fun things about continuing to work on it, as I've continued to press more into that aspect of this piece as I've been continuing to develop it. It was originally produced at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with director Maggie Gravel, who actually instigated the project for her master's thesis. And we had the luxury of performing it in Edinburgh for a lot of the people that I was using as research for this piece. So we actually met Claire Mitchell and Zoya Venzatatsi. They were at the first performance. Judith Langland Scott came to see it and talked to us afterwards about what we got right and the one thing that she wanted changed, which was a pretty small thing, which was great. It had to do with the fairies being called fairies. She said no, they would only call them the good people, so the good neighbors. So it was not a substantive issue with the history of the play. But since that time, I feel like I have had the opportunity to really continue to deepen my understanding of this subject and the impact that it's having in our current world. I've never had a play that people have been more interested in than this piece. Everywhere I go, people want to talk to me about it. They want to know if I know what the word means, prick. People have a response to that title. And they want to know why I named it. It's dirty. Yeah, they want to know why I used that word. And so it kind of leads to this open conversation, no matter who I'm in relationship with in discussion about the play, whether it's a theater person or a friend from my childhood or somebody that I know online. Everybody wants to know more about the subject. And much like the Witches of Scotland campaign and the tartan that they came out with, every time I have a conversation with somebody, it's an opportunity to talk about things that are happening in our world today, misogyny today, the way that women are being diminished exponentially by the minute in our country, and also about what's happening around the world in present time around this subject. So for me, it's been, yes, it had a wonderful production in Edinburgh, but it just keeps expanding, and that my brain keeps expanding around the project. And I think the world of this play keeps expanding. So it's been fascinating to me to have American students and American artists working on the piece, because that was what my first curiosity was. As an American playwright, first of all, I wondered, do I have the right to write this piece? And I feel like I've been endowed with that and have been in relationship with Scottish people who are encouraging the project and encouraging it to go forward. And I really am just tickled every single time there's a new learning or a new kind of sharing about the subject or discovery that happens with American artists.
It's a very interesting question you bring up, Laurie, about do I have the right to write about this? One of the reasons why I picked it for my directing slot is, representation and giving voice to a community is a very contentious thing anymore. And my mom's from Scotland. I have 3 of my 4 grandparents were born there. By process of elimination, I too am also like a descendant of people who endured the witch trials. We don't have enough records from the poor villages that my family are from to trace back anything really. But considering the numbers, like there was only 250,000 people alive during the witch trials of Scotland, and during that 150 years, like 1 in 15 were involved. Like it's very, very likely that at least my ancestors attended, knew people, etc. So I thought, I have a right to direct this play. No one can say, whoa, you shouldn't be doing that play, because I've had colleagues who were called out for directing plays that were not about their culture. And I was like, I got this, which actually matters where I work. In New Orleans, which is a Black dominant community, you have a lot of people whose voices have been misrepresented. and appropriated, and a lot of sort of cultural violence has accumulated in the community here. So I was sort of relieved and proud to bring the story here, yet it was something that was very relatable. It's a deeply spiritual community here on the witchy level, like it's part of our cultural exports, if you will, in New Orleans. A lot of people come here for the voodoo, stay for the alcoholism. No, I'm just kidding. But so there was interest in it on that level. Like people who were apothecary owners showed up to see the show. People who are practicing, who we were speaking before the show started about official and unofficial tours. I mean, there are actual witch tours in town, and there are rites and rituals that happen all the time, very bluntly. And that was interesting that my show was interesting to them. I had a student, I also want to say, I had a student who was my dramaturg, and she was also an architecture student. She took it upon herself to create an actual physical monument to the current number of names on the Witches of Scotland.
The Scottish
list.
witchcraft.
Dating. Yeah, she pulled out every single name, which is nearly 5,000, and created a monument and put it in our lobby.
Yeah, that was pretty profound. You know, it's interesting, Amy, because I've really tuned into the Witches of Scotland campaigners, Zoe and Claire, talking about this very fact, because a lot of people, when this tartan came out, and I'm obsessed about it because I just put it on for the first time today, but people had questions about whether they had the right to wear it. And they have spoken on their podcast about how if you have an interest in righting the wrong, that makes you part of the clan. And I take that to heart. And also, as somebody who, as a writer, I have always worked from a place, well, not always, but I became a writer with an interest in historical events and using that as a springboard towards my work. And this mantra that they've been saying lately, Zoe and Claire have been saying, remembrance is resistance. To me, that remembrance has resistance motto applies to our present moment in our present country. So to me, to be working with this material in a country that I do not have ancestral ties to my knowledge, I have big ties to what's going on here. And to me, the idea of a pricker, well, the title prick comes from both the object, a pricking instrument, and the person who did the actual pricking of a woman looking for a devil's mark on her body. The idea of that pricking to me is a very contemporary thing. Like, we are being pricked all the time. The east wing of the White House got torn down. That's where the women worked. That's where the first ladies were. That like erasure of their existence from the White House grounds, it feels like an act of violence. And to me, that's like the pricking that happened yesterday or the day before. And our whole culture's consciousness. Every woman in America got pricked.
So can I also add to that? It's really interesting, the cultural clash that I had when I took the show to another colonized place, because within the show, you deal with the fact that England is colonizing Scotland. And Scotland is a colonized land. And then they took the warrior men of Scotland and sent them abroad to colonize every other place. And when we went to New Zealand, the site of the most horrific colonization, the site of some of the worst depredations against the indigenous culture, were in Dunedin, which is the Gaelic or the Gaelic word for Edinburgh. And that's in South Island. We performed it in Wellington, in the colonial capital of the country. And we did it at a conference that was very focused on this melding of Maori culture with the acting and voice techniques that we were doing. And then I brought in this play about the depredation and silencing of voices due to colonialism. But the white people there were the colonizers instead of but it was this crazy layering. And I got some very interesting feedback on that from people of different races, cultures, nationalities, identities, and generations in New Zealand. So it was this appropriation combination. Very curious.
Jeff, are you buckled in and ready for your ride on this? Because you can hear like how impactful it is, and you've been working with it. So chime in and tell us what this has
Well,
been like for you.
yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of rehearsals now, so we're deep into staging the amazing puppets and grappling every single rehearsal with some very challenging and difficult material. It is really interesting because Laurie felt like there needed to be a puppet who bore the brunt of the pricking, of the actual pricking, the violent action of the play, so that we wouldn't have to put an actor in that position and to sort of experience that trauma. And we were just working this scene last night, and it was quite disturbing how upset people got from watching the puppet being, and we were there like experimenting in and that's such a hard place to rehearse in, because everybody's stimulated by the things that we have to do with the puppet. And in order to get to the right choice, we have to experiment with a whole range of choices in terms of visually, how does it work? How can we tell this visual story of this puppet being abused, or of a puppet representing a woman being abused in this way? And it's very upsetting. We have to continually kind of take breaks and check in, because the cast is mostly women and female representing folks. The play is very fun for the most part because it has a satirical layer to it. And the puppets reveal this sort of world of kind of joy and playfulness. And then we get to the big punch in the stomach sections where we actually have this man who is got this instrument, a kind of a giant pricker that's made up of the same material as the puppet itself. And we've got several of them. One is smaller, one is medium, and one is very big, which brings it into this very absurd world. In the act of trying to get it right, and we want to be as respectful as we can to the women in the room, to all of us in the room, to the people who've been accused, and to Laurie and her words, and to the puppet, because the puppet has life. The puppet has all of these journeys, and all of the people that have, in this sympathetic way, right, that have used and worked and made that puppet come to life. All of their energy is inside that puppet. And so there is a respect for wanting to treat the puppet well, but knowing that the puppet has to sacrifice a little bit of that well-being to tell the story, which is, I mean, that's what we do as actors all the time when it's a hard story to tell and we put ourselves in those positions. But there's something that when you see it being done to a puppet, that uncanny valley way, it's kind of extra disturbing. So it's a lot of stuff.
My cast didn't want the prick anywhere near her.
Yeah.
We ended up doing the gesture at a 12-foot remove. And that made my ADs still need to leave the room every time, because the power of imagination and the power of Madeline's creation is so profound. She's haunting. I had some designers that I needed to work with at my university and in the community. There were a lot of puppet people here in New Orleans, and they came to see it. And as soon as they were ready, their knives were out. They were like, "We'll see." And as soon as they saw your creation, Madeline, they were all, "No."
It's really fun to hear you guys talking about the experience with a puppet, because we just had this week in Edinburgh, which honestly, the puppet was still being built at that point, where we had physically had our hands on it. And then she's come back to me for repairs, and it's like, "Oh, hey, little traveler." And then I get to, just like touch her up. But there hasn't been much to do. I mean, she's been well cared for. I'm probably the hardest on her, I guess. But it is, I think that just to like speak to the articulation that happens when you're puppeting, is like even the effort, like breath is an effort. So you have to give it life. And in doing that, there's like something I love about puppets is their ability to draw attention to something really simple, like how much that effort takes, because you have to make it an animation to give it life. And then you are suspending belief for the audience in those moments.
Well, and we very specifically, when we first were talking about this puppet, Madeline considered building 3 different puppets for each of the 3 main women who are represented in the show. So the 3 main characters who have what Amy titled arias, which I love that, Amy. There's 3 kind of large arias in the show. The first is an unknown woman based on the sundry women that are all over the records. The second is a character named Marioun Twedy, who is one of the People's Witches, but was not one of the women identified in the big People's Witch Hunt. And it so happens that she had not been uncovered until our play came out, and the People's researchers said, that's so great. We hadn't really talked about Marioun Twedy yet. So that was kind of cool. And then the third one is Isobel Gowdie, the famous Isobel Gowdie, who came into being because Maggie said, after she saw the arias for the unknown woman and for Marioun, we need a baddie. We need somebody who has agency. And obviously that was Isobel. And that was a great, great ask from Maggie, really, because as you're hearing, we're talking about this piece and we're talking about kind of the disturbing and the trauma and these very challenging subjects. As a writer, there's this kind of fine line you walk to say, how can we address these things and also give our audience a relief, give them a valve, give them a way to learn things and hear things and observe things without also being totally traumatized by the work itself, being in a place where they can lean in and then also lean out a little bit. So that's kind of the tension that I feel. But I just wanted to go back to the accused for a second. We had discussed making 3 different puppets, and then Madeline actually modeled her after one of the actors in the original Edinburgh production. And then we decided that she actually represented every woman. And I wonder, Amy and Jeff, if that every woman feeling, if it is that we all see this puppet and we do see ourselves in them, in the rehearsal room or in the watching of it.
Well, it's a testament to the puppet design because it's a very tricky thing to design something, a puppet or a mask, that has enough specificity in their features and yet doesn't cross over into being decorative, so that there's an emergence of something, but it isn't quite finished. And it just reaches just a little bit outside of the puppet so that the audience can project onto the puppet, right? So there's enough empty space on the puppet that the audience projects and they see themselves. And to me, that's always the difference between a good puppet, a puppet that you can really bring to life, and a puppet that is difficult to bring to life. It's that space. And I do think it's a particular challenge to be able to represent 3 different women. And that puppet is neutral enough and yet specific enough that it does both jobs in this really spectacular way. So yes, we have been finding really wonderful ways for her to represent all 3 of the women who have these arias. 4 really, because there's the farmer's wife as well.
Right.
That's the thing. It's also a testament to Laurie's writing.
Yes.
Because
Which has that same thing. Mm-hmm.
It's not just the 3 historical women. And it's interesting too. We've talked about it. My cast, I had 6 women and 3 men in the show. And there are these other characters in the show that are kind of television personalities, but one woman sells the other woman out a little bit. And there's the survivor and the terror in her. And then in the final moment, which of course we go to a witch burning after we have the pregame show, Witches Burn Live, and scene 9, we have scene 15 has the burning. And there's a solo that Laurie had permission to use some music that was inspired by the Witches of Scotland podcast. And I had that music, which is sort of ambient, I had it translated into a cappella music for my cast to sing together. And there was a solo voice, and the actress who played the farmer's wife, I made her kind of into the bard. Because after the first scene, we never see the farmer's wife again, except in the body of the accused, the puppet. And so I had her coming on and singing each new scene on with the theme. And at the end, she and the kind of Telecaster who's been possessed by the spirit of the future and then accused of witchcraft. I have them singing the accused on into her place on the pyre. I wanted, as badly as Laurie did, I felt called by the piece to give these accused women who are thrown under in the piece a voice, even at the end. I felt that the accused deserved an elegy, even though Laurie didn't put a song in there. I put one in. But that's also, the style of the work is story theater, which is something that Laurie and Jeff and I have deep history in, and can breathe with the music that you want to kind of swim in with it. Laurie's writing lends itself to
This is so interesting because we're talking about the play, but this is also a thing about process for a playwright. If you're a lucky playwright like me, you get to keep working on a piece after you finish it. You get to keep going with it. And then for what you're witnessing is me collaborating with two other artists who know me and my work and my aesthetic and my style so deeply that they're getting things, but they're also asking me questions in the way that we've been asking each other questions for years and years and years. And then a really easy collaboration with Madeline. So this piece just, in some ways, it feels like it has a trajectory of its own. And I'm just saying yes to everything that comes through it because I feel like, I don't know, there's something deeply flowing through the work in this piece and in the producing of it and in the working on it. And I just feel really grateful to both of you, Amy, and Jeff. I can't wait to see the Chicago production.
I want to hear about Jeff's music choices because he's a gifted musician and composer. And I know he had some really unusual inspiration for it.
I not necessarily unusual inspiration, but I had, going back, I do play Celtic music in a previous life. I was in an Irish-Scottish music band. And I always loved comparing the Irish music with the Scottish music. The Scottish music was always a little bit darker. It had a little bit more open chords, and there was actually more harmonizing in Scottish songs. And so I went with that, and I'm doing the sound design and the composition using the tuning that a lot of Scottish musicians currently use, which is the DAD, GAD, DAD-GAD tuning, and put a lot of electronics on it. And so I've been creating atmosphere with these big open chords and using it as the bedrock for the two, because we don't have much. We're not going to be able to have haze or anything like that, but I'll create the atmosphere with sound, and I'll be able to feed in the song that Laurie got permission to use at the end.
It's a Healin' Hero tune, Sarah and Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys know Healin' Hero?
Yeah, Witches of Scotland, as Laurie mentioned, they were inspired Heel and Arrow. So there's a Witches of Scotland episode with them.
And they did that entire album, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used two songs off that album. I had used A Claire, and it's in 6-part harmony. And then I did a sped up version of another piece, and If I Am a Witch, Will the Devil Help Me Now? That one.
And we did the opening bit. We've created a song. It's a song. That's an opening number.
The walking song.
The walking song, yes. And there's a lot of sort of rounds inside of it. So there's this sort of electronic guitar. There's like this distant taps, distant Scottish drumming way off in the distance. And then these singing, and within the song, every once in a while, they'll start a round and it will create this beautiful spiral. And yeah, it's really pretty gorgeous.
And I can't wait to see Madeline built a whole new set of bird puppets for this production.
Yeah.
You have new jackdaws? My students were the jackdaws.
They were great jackdaws, Amy. Yeah. Madeline built a new set, a different style of jackdaws for this production that are just stunning. They're gorgeous. And I saw a video of you guys rehearsing a dance with those, Jeff. So, and I think that kind of people are surprised by what happens in this play. I mean, Sarah and Josh, you read it. It's even changed since you've seen it. Amy did an immersive production where people in the audience were projected into the scenery. And Jeff is kind of doing a hybrid of that. And that's kind of one of the areas that I push more into, the media and the television aspect of it. I hope you get to see it sometime.
Yes, it's so hard to not have seen it, I will tell you. But it's so hearing you guys today speak about what it has become, what it's becoming. It's so exciting because when we first met a couple years ago, you told us it's still alive. And that wasn't just a statement. You really meant it. And it's very evident. So it's amazing to hear about what it is right now, what it's been, what it's becoming. This is really incredible.
People are shocked. Shocked. My audiences were overwhelmingly shocked that state-sponsored sexual torture existed for 150 years and was a public event. And the idea of witch burnings kind of American culture sort of holds it slightly. The fact that this is a little emotional. You said you'd lived in the Gulf South. I mean, people are still being hung and burned today, here, in the here and now, as you say in your play, Laurie. And there is a coda in the piece, or as we rise to the final burning, the women's chorus does speak of or in my play, the women's chorus, but the chorus of voices does speak of the contemporary persecution of people and the use of witchcraft as an actual state crime. And as I breathe this in this moment, that doesn't feel that far off.
Mm-mm.
There's a strong, in the state in which I live, there is a very strong theological banner carried about all the time in public life that you have to fly under. And I'm an academic at a private institution, and I feel that weight. I'm not making that up. Anybody who's from here will tell you. And the contemporary, I mean, you brought up the East Wing, Laurie, if we're going to talk about that, like the contemporary brand of white supremacy that exists in America at this time is born out of Louisiana. Steve Scalise lives 6 miles from me. Amy Coney Barrett went to the high school that my next door neighbor went to. Mike Johnson's district includes my father-in-law's hometown. Like, they're here. They're not going anywhere, and they believe in witches.
Right. I can't even say we're surprised by the rhetoric that comes out that literally is demonizing people and calling people demons and demon inspired. And, it easily could switch over to that label of just, you're a witch, you're a witch. They were calling Harris a witch in the campaign. They were calling her a witch. And we've seen some incidents in some Southern towns. Not that it's just a Southern thing, it's also in the West, I'd have to say. But we've seen in some Southern towns where people will go out and protest neo-paganism and modern day witchcraft practices. And it intimidates people very easily. So we can still see a lot of that same kind of persecution that's been around. Sarah mentioned witch hunts have been going on for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Yeah.
The other thing is Laurie's play is really super factual. Like, it's packed full of nutrients, but it's really entertaining because, as everybody knows, people don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel. And that's the beautiful thing about Laurie's play is there's enough humor in it. There's a lot of humor in it. With these sublime moments of poetry and lyricism and song and silliness. And I have no doubt Jeff's play is even more physical and dancey than mine was, because I was working with untrained undergraduates, and he has this incredible ensemble of gifted professionals. But within all of that entertainment, there's facts served up, and people walk away chewing that information. What do you hope people are going to get from your show, Jeff? I mean, my audience was university kids, so I had a different goal, but talk to me about that.
I think that most of the people who come, we are hoping to branch into a new group of folks potentially here. And most of our plays have been very kind of femme forward. And so we're building a community, building an audience from that, although we're still very small. There are several kind of shops around Chicago. There's bookstores, occult bookstores, and there's a lot of associations and groups and Facebook groups and things like that that are in Chicago that are connected to modern day pagan practices and witchcraft. And so we're trying to sort of branch and let those folks know that this play is happening. I mean, it was a little bit by accident that we're here around in the Halloween time. So sometimes that we open on the 6th. We open after Halloween,
November
20,
2025.
and we run through this. Yeah, November 6th, 2025. Yes, and we run through the 16th. So it's really just a 2-weekend run. But
Where is it?
it is at the Den Theater on Milwaukee.
Where can we find ticket information?
Well, you can find ticket information at the Den website.
dentheater.com.
Yeah, the dentheater.com really. And we have our own little page within that, but that's a long, complicated one. So the dentheater.com will get you there. And just put Prick in the search. So anyway, yes, we are at the Den Theater from November 6th through the 16th. dentheater.com. You can get your tickets. And we do have a couple of people in the cast who are practicing, who are involved in some of the pagan practices and theater. If you talk about the dehumanization that is going on right now in the world, in our culture, the very intentional dehumanization for power, to gain power, the thing that we can do to resist that is to rehumanize. And there is no other better way to do that as a group than going to the theater. Because, while you're in that room together, it's hard for that power structure to touch you. And it can't be run by AI, because if it was AI, it would not be theater anymore, right? So theater, we have to just keep making theater and creating things and being together and collaborating audience and in live places, in real life places. And that act in and of itself is an act of rehumanization every time we step in and see a play together and do a play together. So the fact it's just this delicious sort of double-decker benefit to our own humanization that we are also trying to rehumanize the memory of these poor people that were persecuted. And we're also rehumanizing ourselves by attending theater. And very lucky that we get to do it.
I'm going to try to come up and see it.
Yay.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm just so grateful that you guys are doing the rehumanization, because even history, our memory itself is under assault right now. And we have to speak up for these historic victims and put that flesh back on them and make them whole humans again, and realize they're not, these supposed witches aren't caricatures or just data in this database. They were human beings, and they suffered at the hands of oppressors. So we have to acknowledge that before we can move forward, I think.
The play involves bringing these witches, or these people who were accused of being witches and who were executed, bringing them back into existence, bringing them back into three-dimensional reality, which is a tricky business, and it's fraught with ethical issues. And the characters in the play are faced with these emotional issues and these ethical issues of like, oh, are we doing the right thing here? And these are the questions that we ask as theater makers all the time. Is this thing that we're doing, is it doing harm? Is it doing good? What are we doing? So we are in this rehearsal room every day, portraying characters who are in that process of figuring out whether it's right to bring back these beings so that they can, for the good of writing the record, for the good of the monument of memory. That's the journey of the play, is that the women who are conjuring or bringing these human beings back to life are on their journey of, what are we exactly doing? Are we hurting these people? But in the end, I think that everybody realizes that if the message, the memory is the important thing, and the accuracy of who these people are and how they should be remembered.
It's really exciting to see this play have its own life and reinterpretation and the aliveness. And what I hope is it resonates in a way that feels relevant to the audience. I think that there's many direct interpretations of the work and those that can be deeply personal for individuals. So I just hope that it speaks to people and sparks something.
I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity to talk in this way. This is the first time that Jeff and Amy and I have talked since Amy had her production and Jeff's been in rehearsal. And I don't know if you have listeners who are also theater practitioners, but if anyone's interested in this piece, please find me and reach out to me. One of the things that I love about this particular piece, and Amy spoke to it when she said story theater, you can fill things in. This can be done with a lot of different sizes of casts and configurations. And I still feel like I'm making discoveries. And when I see Jeff's audience, seeing Jeff's actors, I'll be learning some more about what this play means beyond me, beyond what it means to the observer. And I do hope and believe that it will go on beyond what I think it's possible. So
I want to speak to the fact that 85 people saw it in Wellington, New Zealand, and 3 different directors came up to me afterwards going, "Where'd you find the play?" They all want to know more about it. They all want to do it because it's an ensemble-based cast and it has this flexibility and fluidity. But it's very, it can be done with many sizes of casts and many iterations. It's also just really fun. It's a fun show. Laurie is a fun writer. She's got a great voice. One of the reasons Jeff and I jumped on it, not just because we get to work with Laurie, but because her writing is so damn good. And my students, most of whom are not theater majors, I don't teach at a conservatory. My students are art majors and finance majors and sociology majors. They quote the show to me still. Jeff just said it's tricky business, and all I could hear was them saying, tricky business. Learning a witch is tricky business. And there's just so many great lines in it that you'll walk away enjoying, and sublime, silly, funny pops, all straight out of Laurie's delicious self.
Everyone should have friends as lovely as my friends, Amy and Jeff. Thank you, Amy.
Lovely. Yeah, and I would just say too that theater makers and magicians and alchemists and witches, in the good sense of the word, we're all of this cut from the same cloth. We're creating magic in spaces, and that magic, and I'll just go back on that harp again, that magic is humanizing. It isn't dehumanizing.
This is your opportunity. Get your tickets at thedentheater.com. That's THEATRE. Go to Chicago and see the play Prick.
Don't miss out. Get those tickets today and have a great today and a beautiful tomorrow.